Vegas is expecting slight improvement for the Auburn Tigers, but will it be enough?
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. We are dapping it up with the Darrell Dapprich. We will talk Auburn basketball later in the show, but it's fitting. Today's show brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. More on FanDuel later, but FanDuel dropped the over-under lines for total wins. And Darrell, they had Auburn at 6.5 a year ago, and we spent the first 8 months of the year saying there's no way that the over doesn't hit. And of course, it didn't. It did not last year. They've got it at 7.5, so they're expecting a step forward, a step in the right direction for the Auburn Tigers, which I think we all want. But 7.5, like, is that where Auburn needs to be year 3 going into the Hugh Freeze era? I don't know. But you've said 8-4 pretty consistently so far this offseason. So you like the over on this bet.
Absolutely. And I think this speaks straight to the roster reconstruction. I think that they are looking at what Auburn has in the way of personnel and talent as opposed to last year, seeing improved roster, especially at the quarterback position, and figure that's enough for one win. And I absolutely feel like it's going to be over that. And I've stuck to my gun saying that Auburn wins at least 8 games.
So let's go with the gimmies. Let's go with the ones that we feel most confident about. Ball State, South Alabama, Mercer at home. That gets us to 3. This is what we did 12 months ago. Now, 12 months ago, we also lumped Cal into the automatic wins and Arkansas into the automatic wins. But I think those games that are kind of on that same tier of games that Auburn should win, I'm okay putting at Baylor there. I don't feel as confident as some people do, but I think at Baylor is certainly a winnable game. I think at Arkansas is certainly a winnable game. I think Missouri at home is going to be overhyped a little bit, but I expect Missouri to take a pretty large step back. They're having to replace a lot. Kentucky at home, I think, is gettable. And I think Vandy on the road is gettable. So of those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those games, I think are extremely winnable for the Auburn Tigers.
And that puts you at 8 right there. And that's without upsetting a Georgia or an Alabama.
Well,
or, you know what I'm saying? So
is Auburn going to go 5-0 in those games this year? Do you think they could?
Maybe not, but I also don't think they're going to go 0-4 in those other 3.
Okay.
So there's going to be a swap somewhere. There's going to be a trade-off somewhere to get them to 8 wins. Yes, they may lose at Baylor or at Arkansas, but they also may beat Texas A&M, Alabama, or Georgia. I'm tired of just conceding.
Or Oklahoma. Oklahoma was the other one.
Yeah, I'm tired of just conceding those games. Auburn has almost beat Alabama the last 2 years at Jordan-Hare with far inferior talent than they have on their roster and far inferior talent when you're comparing it to what Alabama has. The gap has been closed as far as talent on the roster between the two schools. Mm-hmm. So Auburn may get 2 of those between Oklahoma, Georgia, A&M, and Alabama. Who's to say? I think I am very comfortable saying 8, and I'm very comfortable because I know some things last year went a little bit weird, where there were some fluky things that happened. There were some self-inflicted things that no way that if those happen 2 years in a row, then Auburn needs to do some sort of ritual to because it's under some kind of curse.
Or ask a bigger question. Like, if you can't nail the little things several years in a row, then at what point is, like, you look at who's leading the charge. I mean, the little things matter. The little things won and lost Auburn several games a year ago. And the situation at kicker, super, super frustrating, super unfortunate for everyone involved. But, like, you got to have a plan. And it looks like they've got plenty of options now at kicker. So I think that's going to be a step forward in the right direction, even if it's Towns again. I just think, I think we kind of write off the fact of like, oh, he's a freshman kicker, like whatever. But it's just like any other position. Like you don't want to start a freshman in that situation. They didn't plan to. Stuff just happens. So we'll see what happens with that. But the roster reconstruction, Auburn's roster on paper is better than all of those teams that we've mentioned, with the exception of Georgia and Bama and maybe Texas A&M. Is that correct? Will Auburn's roster be more talented than 9 of the 12 teams that they play?
I think so. I believe so. And the Baylor-Cal comparison, where I'm a little bit hesitant, I think Auburn beats Baylor solely based upon the fact that I think Auburn will be significantly better than they were last year. But I think Cal,
I hope so.
But I think Cal playing in Jordan-Hare, to me, would have been more of a gimme than Auburn playing on the road in Waco, right? So that Cal game should have been an easier win. But I do believe Auburn's going to start off on the right foot at Baylor.
I hope so.
And get that.
I hope so. And something you said when you were mentioning, like, if they may not go 5-0 in those 5 games that we mentioned, and you said, they may lose at Baylor or at Arkansas. Like, I'm not saying that you think this, but just the way you said it, like, I don't think Baylor is the same as those others, because if you lose, the panic is going to be unreal if they lose in Waco to open the season. I think you can especially if you beat Missouri and then you lose against Arkansas, and then you're able to turn around and say, well, we could beat Kentucky and Vandy. But to start the season off with a loss, like, I just can't imagine the panic and the people calling for Hugh Freeze. It will be awful if Auburn loses in Waco.
Yeah, Auburn traditionally doesn't lose its opener. We talked about this before. They lost that one to Clemson under Gus, and they also lost that kickoff classic thing. Might have been Clemson as well when Kyle Frazier was the quarterback or whatever. So that's it. That's the only 2 I can remember
that
losing.
Was the Clemson. Yeah.
And so Auburn traditionally, whether they're playing Washington State, whether they're playing Oregon, whether they're playing Washington, they typically do well in their a Cupcake. They do well in the openers. And see, this team is built different than a lot of the teams that could have overcome that. A Tuberville team losing its first game on the road against a non-conference opponent, their panic button wouldn't have set in, right? I mean, you feel like they could have bounced back from that. This team's, in my opinion, fragile. They need success. They don't need the, oh no, here we go again. This is like a repeat of last year. We're finding ways to lose games that we should win. Of course, we don't know what the line's going to be. But that's why I think it's very important for Auburn to get off on the right foot. So just psychologically.
Yeah.
I think this team's now, as the year goes on, I believe this team's not going to have a fragile psyche or fragile ego. I think they're going to start to feel some confidence and momentum and realize, hey, this team is different than the last 3 or 4 Auburn teams. This is the team that can get to 8 wins, to a nice bowl game, and let's go.
I hope so. So there's a clear path to Auburn overachieving, with FanDuel having that 7.5 win mark as far as the over-under. There are some questions. There are some things that stand in the way of this. And some of them are things we've actually mentioned this segment. I want to jump more into that in just a moment, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. What a timely ad read. FanDuel right now, you can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if that first $5 bet wins. If you're hearing us talk about this in that first segment, you're like, man, yeah, Auburn is going to hit the over. Or if you keep listening and we make kind of the counterpoint, it's like, oh, man, is Auburn going to get to 8 wins or whatever? Get in on the action over at FanDuel. Auburn is currently a 1.5-point favorite against Baylor in Waco. And then they just dropped the line as we record this for basketball tonight. Auburn is a 13.5-point favorite against Ole Miss. You like that? Yeah. No, not touching it?
I think it's a little high.
It's a lot. So we'll see. We'll talk more about that basketball game in a second. But head over to FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet hits. Makes every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA and the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Darrell Dapprich, there are some questions still about this team, and I don't want to have the conversation of like potential obstacles. Like, we're not allowed to bring up injury. Like, that's obvious. We're not allowed to bring up injuries. But I do think one of my concern, it's my biggest concern. And I almost wanted to go this direction when I brought it up in the first segment, but I wanted to save it. Auburn has a better roster on paper than 9 of the 12 opponents that they have on their schedule this year. But you could have said that about a lot of teams that they lost to last year as well. You could have said it about Cal. You could have said it about Arkansas. Could have said it about Oklahoma. Kind of wonder if you could have said it about Missouri. I think that was closer, but still. And if Auburn beats the teams that
Vanderbilt had a better roster.
Vanderbilt, 100%. So to me, like, that's my biggest concern is in those games, and we can blame it on the little things. We can blame it on special teams. We can blame it on quarterback play. We can blame it on decision-making. We can blame it on literally anything you want. It still comes down to coaching. Like, that is his job. That is Hugh Freeze's job, is to win the games that you're supposed to win. And maybe every year you get one that you're not supposed to. Like, that's where we need to be right now. And that isn't where we were in year 2 of the Hugh Freeze era. So my biggest concern is we haven't consistently been able to beat teams that we're better than on paper. We've got to figure out how to make that step this year.
The only way you get beat when you play teams that you have more talent than and that you're superior to from a talent pool standpoint, there's only one of two. There's only 2 ways, in my opinion, that you get.
Are you about to say a T word? The T word?
You either get outcoached.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Or you beat yourself.
Oh, okay. Turnovers is what I was going with, but that's to beat yourself, I guess. Sure.
It's bigger than turnovers. It's stupid penalties. Right. It's missing field goals. It's self-inflicted crap that gets you beat. So you either get outcoached by a mastermind that schemes you up. He takes his Jimmies and Joes and beats your Jimmies and Joes, even though they're better, because he outcoached you and he out-schemed you.
Yeah.
Or it's not a matter of coaching and you just beat yourself and do stupid things to just, you've heard that old adage. The only way this team could lose this game is if they beat themselves, or the only team that can beat them is themselves, blah, blah, blah. Okay.
Boy, did we do that. Yes. Did we do that last year?
And so I can't imagine that happening 2 years in a row. I just think the law of averages says that cannot happen 2 years in a row. And here's the other thing.
I know you love to say law of averages stuff, but like, if that's who you are, I think that's who we were.
It's not.
I think it was who we were last year.
Maybe it is. Some of that got cleaned up in the second half, though. Some of the second half of the season, they stopped with the shooting themselves in the foot crap and beat Kentucky, beat A&M. They shot themselves in the foot against Missouri and lost in the fourth quarter because of that. They collapsed.
Yeah, we scored 7 points against Vanderbilt.
I know, but I get it. But
okay.
did they turn it over 3 or 4 times, or did they just not move the ball? And not lack of execution and not finishing in the red zone, to me, is also a symptom of beating yourself. I think it is.
I got you.
So I just can't imagine that happening 2 years in a row. And here's the other thing.
Yeah.
I think it'd be safe to say that the most important position on the field that Auburn had to upgrade was at the quarterback position.
Yeah.
I'm here to tell you, and people can laugh, scoff, say what you want in the comments. I encourage it. If Jackson Arnold's your starter, and I want him to do really, really well.
Here we go. Let's do this. Here we go.
Say
it.
I'm comfortable with Deuce Knight or Daniels playing, and Auburn still getting to 8 wins.
Gosh, you just can't help yourself from bringing up Ashton Daniels.
I like
you.
Him.
Just can't.
I don't.
I thought you were going with the Deuce Knight stuff.
Well, I don't think that there's a catastrophe. Some teams can lose their starting quarterback and it'd be catastrophic. I'm telling you, Auburn can still win 8 games with that defense that we're hearing that they're really excited about, that they're bringing back. There's chatter that it's special. And with that offensive line and with that running game and that group of receivers, how can Ashton Daniels be any worse than Peyton Thorne? You know what he can do? He can run. He's more athletic. Yeah, I get the stats that he had or whatever. But what about Deuce Knight? I'm hearing Deuce Knight is making this quarterback really interesting. Don't write him off.
That's the best case scenario for Auburn, both in the present and the future.
I don't think it's catastrophic if, like a lot of teams lose their starting quarterback and you see a significant drop-off. The way this team is built and this quarterback room, I think that you could still reach your goals of 8 wins and you would not see that significant of a drop-off.
Yeah, I do agree that it's significantly deeper for sure. I love the upside that Deuce Knight represents, and you and I are hearing the same stuff as far as how impressive he's been. And Hugh Freeze hinted at it when we spoke to him down in Mobile for the Senior Bowl. Like the comment he made, and I've said it a few times now, is like he's not waiting to be great; he's going to get it.
Yep.
And that's what you need. That's what the greats do. Is they can't stand being the level that they are right now, so they're constantly finding ways to get to that next level. And everything that we've heard about Deuce Knight is exactly that. Ryan G., the Auburn tight end, has come on this show and said similar things about both of the quarterbacks. And I don't know if he necessarily had that in previous years. So that's a breath of fresh air for sure. I still have a hard, and this is where, I mean, we've got to agree to disagree. I do have a hard time seeing a scenario. I mean, assuming Deuce Knight and Ashton Daniels are both healthy and something happens to Jackson, whether he's benched for performance or injury, whatever, where it's not Deuce Knight over Ashton. I just have a hard time seeing that, but that's going to be something that we disagree on until
I don't see all.
happens.
I get it. I mean, I hope you're right. I'd like to see Deuce Knight ascend over. I think the age thing, the level of competition, and it's very, very hard. You don't go out and get a kid in the portal that was a 2-year starter at a Power 5 program to make him QB3. I just don't see that happening.
Why not?
Because I think you in the SEC, you would rather go with a guy that's played big boy football.
Who do you think is getting more NIL money? Ashton Daniels or Deuce Knight?
That's projected, though. That's projected to where they think Deuce Knight's going to be and what kind of quarterback he's going to be. You're investing in the future with that NIL money. I'm telling you, a guy that's played and started 20-something games at Power 5 football, you feel better throwing out against the Wolves of the SEC than a true freshman that hasn't taken a snap. Now, let me just say this. If I'm wrong, and I've been wrong a lot, then that means Deuce Knight ascended. He's cooking. He's ascended.
Cooking.
He's ascended to a level that they, when they went and got Ashton Daniels, thought could be a viable backup. Deuce Knight's really, really, really emerged, and that's good news.
Yeah, and maybe I'm projecting that. Maybe subconsciously I'm projecting that in this. I think Ashton not being here for spring and Deuce not being here for spring is a big deal. I think it's a big, big deal. And I think in the long term, it's going to be a good thing for Auburn. But just the eligibility timeline of Jackson Arnold to Deuce Knight, this coaching staff is going to have to show Deuce everything they can to say, hey, we need you to sit for 2 years. You are the future. We promise. We've got to sprinkle in any bit of playing time that we certainly can. I think the timeline makes it tricky unless Jackson's great, which is the best case scenario. Jackson's incredible. He goes to the league after this year. Then you hand the reins to Deuce Knight. Like that's the best case scenario. Am I betting on that to happen? Am I betting on Jackson Arnold being a draft pick 365 days from now? I don't think so. But boy, would that be fun if it was.
I don't think it's that big of a deal that your backup's going to miss spring. I think if Ashton Daniels was brought in like Peyton Thorne was a couple years ago to be your starter, missing spring is a bigger issue than just, number one, he's coming in to learn the offense at his own pace because he's not going to have to be forced and rushed to start. Number two, you're talking about a kid that plays at Stanford. I think he could pick the offense up. You see what I'm saying? I mean,
well, here's what I'll say to that.
He's a smart dude. I think he'll pick it up. I think he'll be fine.
Here's what I say to that. Auburn's backup quarterback is going through spring, and his name is Deuce Knight. I love that we disagree on this. We always agree on so much. I love that we disagree on this.
Except that I will be glad to be wrong.
Sure.
You see what I'm saying? Like,
sure.
I'm in your boat. If that's what happens, I think it's a good thing for Auburn.
I'm with you. All right. Auburn basketball takes on Ole Miss, 13.5-point favorites. I like it. That's next right here on Locked On Auburn. It's such a weird situation to me because on one side you see, okay, Auburn's number one, best resume in college basketball. Every voter voted for them to be number one in this week's poll. And then on the other side, you see all these talking heads and you watch all these basketball games where they're trying to like make arguments for Auburn and not be number one. You see it all over the place. But everybody like that, I guess, is deemed a voter. Nobody really wants to submit themselves and say, yeah, Florida is better than Auburn. But that's all you hear. That's all you hear all over the place. So my question to you, Darrell, and I speculated this yesterday with Ben a little bit. What does Auburn need to do against Ole Miss to silence the doubters? My take is I don't think there's anything.
There is nothing they can do, because if they haven't silenced the doubters already, the only way they're going to silence the doubters is to win the national championship. I don't know what else you could do in your resume to silence doubters. I don't know, when you go on the road and everyone had such a love fest in glazed Alabama, and Auburn goes on the road and beats them.
They were number one in the coaches poll, which that week was the most important poll. Apparently.
That should have ended all that at that point, and it didn't. So I get it. Florida beat Auburn head-to-head. Florida's looked really good. It's recency bias. But people seem to forget that Auburn went on the road and beat the number 2 team in the country in their gym and looked good doing it. So that's why I don't think there's anything they can do short of winning the national title to shut up the pundits that are just going to be biased against Auburn anyway. It is what it is, whatever.
How quickly do we see Auburn make Janai Broom the focal point of the offense tonight? We saw it in the last, 10 minutes or so of the Georgia game where he just absolutely took over. My guess is we see this early and we see it often unless fouls become a part of the scenario.
Well, I think the great thing about Janai Broom and trying to run the offense through him is it's not a black hole. You're not throwing it into a black hole and he forces up shots. Janai Broom is very adept and very, very good at finding open teammates if he's getting doubled on the block and the shot's not there. So it's very simple. You run the offense through Broom. If a guy tries to take him one-on-one, he does his little spin move, jump hook, whatever, and he eats. If they double down on him, he swings the ball back to a guard on a wing, and Denver or Miles are shooting an open three.
Right.
He's such a good passer, an elite passer for a big man, that you're okay. And even when he pops out, when they play that 5 out or whatever it is, and Broom comes out, you know what that's designed to do, Zach? It's designed to get that big stiff in whoever it is that's guarding him in the block to come out and not clog the paint, so Auburn's guards can drive and penetrate. When Broom comes out, if he hits the occasional three and people start running out on him, he's been putting it on the floor and going by people too. So you can run the offense through him in a variety of ways. It's just going to depend on what kind of, does Chris Beard look at Mike White's zone and say, ooh, that gave Auburn a little bit trouble in the first half. Let me replicate that. Well, go ahead, and then Broom's going to get you for 30. Somehow Auburn finds that area in the zone, and then if Auburn gets hot shooting the basket, like that zone that Georgia played, Zach, against Auburn, if Auburn would have hit 35% of its threes, they beat Georgia by 15.
Right.
It would have killed them. So you're gambling that Auburn's going to shoot in the 20 percentile rank too. So they'll beat you in a variety of ways. Yes, run it through Broom, because Broom can throw it right back out to the to the perimeter.
Yeah, I've been saying throughout the week, like 80 to 70-ish as the game gets.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, as the game gets closer, I think I want to scoot Auburn's total up a little bit. I almost want to say like 85, 70. Like I think Auburn covers. I think Auburn, I don't say make a statement because nobody cares at this point. Nobody cares about what Auburn does. They're just going to say the same thing no matter what. What they've done is remarkably impressive.
You can win any way. You can win ugly. You can win great. You'll still be the number 1 overall seed. Regardless, just win. In fact, I think somebody asked me on X, private messaged me earlier today and said, Dap, what do you think Auburn has to do in the next 4 games to hold on to the number 1 overall seed? And I said, just win 3 of 4. There are some people that think they only have to win 2 of 4 and they'll hold on to it. But I think if you win 3 of the next 4 games and finish 16-2 in the SEC, which, oh, by the way, will have you winning the SEC outright, you're the number 1 overall seed.
I think if they win 2 of them, but one of them is Bama, you're good. I think you get it no matter what.
It's good. Interesting. Yep. And I think Auburn wins tonight anywhere between 10 and 12, so I don't think they'll cover. It's not an indictment upon Auburn. I think Auburn's going to play better tonight. Yeah. I just think Ole Miss is going to play better than Arkansas and Georgia did. So therefore, similar spread, but getting there differently.
Yeah, a dynamic down the stretch when we talk about like the SEC standings that I'm not seeing discussed much, and we haven't discussed it much here, but Bama and Florida playing each other is super important.
It's an elimination game.
It's super important.
They both have 3 losses. One of those teams is going to get to 4, and that's it. It's over. So the loser of Florida-Bama, in my opinion, it becomes a 2-horse race with A&M losing to Tennessee last Saturday. So, yes, that's an elimination game. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a big one. It's a big one. And Auburn on the road against A&M and Kentucky, like, I don't know. I still think Auburn wins both of those games. But if you drop one of those, I just don't think it hurts you that much. But we'll see. We'll see how the committee views it. But, yeah, we both think Auburn wins double digits tonight. Let us know what you think down below. Darrell, how can people check out everything you've got going on?
Follow me on X, DAP6410, Instagram, Darrell Dapp, Wednesdays and Fridays with you. And then we go live tonight from Neville. Ooh. I'll be in Neville right when the game's over.
Yep. So go find Darrell and make funny faces behind him while we're live. That was funny. That was funny. Please like the video. Please subscribe. And if you're listening on audio, please subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. Helps the show out a ton. We'll see you next time. This has been Locked On Auburn.